Welcome to our Monday Parent Mindset. And today I want you to really lean into the idea that even when there is a big meltdown, even when today you are stuck, I want you to really lean into the idea that dealing with an epic tantrum, that you can avoid making one of the biggest mistakes I see parents and caregivers make over and over again. So that instead of escalating this big emotional upset, you can de-escalate. Instead of feeding fuel, like fanning the flames and feeding fuel to the fire, you start to extinguish it and cool things down. It's so, I can see myself in so many hot, sweaty moments where I'm just trying to keep cool myself while a child is hitting or screaming or kicking. I remember when I was trying to bring a child off of the schoolyard into the classroom, and they were completely shut down, having their own version of a meltdown, which was a lot quieter. But they had their hood on, and they're just like bundled up in this tiny little ball, hiding in the corner of the yard, and completely ignoring everybody's request of like, okay, it's time to come in. Let's go. Let's go. I want you to know what to do in those moments, because you don't have to stumble through them hundreds of times to figure it out, friends. That's the good news. And I can lend you what I've experienced through doing that hundreds of times, to make sure that you have strategies and tools and you can avoid some of the hardest things about big emotions. So there's a lot that we can do here, but today I want to focus on one particular tip, okay? And this tip is something that is coming from a place of total compassion and love and admiration for you, because I know that you're a big-hearted parent, otherwise you wouldn't even be listening right now to this recording. I also want to acknowledge that we are pre-wired to melt down, and we're going to talk more about the science of this during our webinar this Saturday. So before we dive into the topic for today, I want you to go ahead and register for this webinar we've got going on this weekend. I know I've got Sandrine here with me on Zoom and some other folks listening on Facebook. I'll make sure to put the link there too. Go ahead and grab your spot. And while I encourage you to come live, just like Dara and Jen and Shelly and Courtney did at our last one, they got so much out of it because they were able to share, say, okay, this is what I'm going to work on. This is what I have a challenge in. Here's my strength. Here's my plan. I was able to really coach them through that so they could really walk away with actionable steps. I really recommend you come live, but if for some reason you're not totally sure you can make the time, don't let that be the reason you don't register, because I'm also able to share a replay video with you for the whole next week up until next Sunday. So give yourself the gift of more support. Okay. If you made it here, that means let's keep this ball rolling. All right. So I went ahead and stuck the link in so you could just go ahead and take care of that now. All right. So, you ready for it? I'm going to share the biggest mistake you could possibly make. Now, before I do, I want you to put in the chat, if you're listening to the replay too, play along, put the word replay and let me know. Put into the chat, into the comments, what do you think is the biggest mistake you could make when handling a meltdown or a big tantrum, or you're in the middle of a power struggle and tension is running high? Oh, Joe's here too on Zoom. Hi, Joe, welcome. In the chat right now, we're answering the question, what do you think would be the biggest mistake you could make in the middle of an epic tantrum or a big heartbreaking meltdown, or in the middle of an angry conflict? What is the biggest mistake that you think you could make? So I want you to, the reason I'm asking you to think about this question, and by the way, this is a strategy that I would encourage you to use with your kids all the time. When you want to give them a piece of information, ask them first, what do they think? Because it actually primes the pump. It primes your brain to find that part of your sort of schematic of information in your brain, and it primes it and fires and it gets it all ready and juicy and warmed up, so that when we land in the knowledge, which is what am I going to avoid in these meltdown moments today, it lands there and it sticks even better. So I'm hearing from Sandrine saying, not listening to the child and asking him to stop. Yep, good. Raising voices higher than the child screaming themselves. Good. Right. Let's keep this rolling. Joe, what do you think? What is the biggest mistake a parent or caregiver could make? What do you think during a meltdown or a tantrum or a power struggle? Nice. Joe says overreacting. Joe, can you tell us more about what overreacting would look like? Just give us like, paint us a little picture. Like, what that mean? Like Sandrine's like raising your voice. What do you think? Yeah. I'm so curious on Facebook too. Share some in the comments, like, what do you think could be? Yeah. Joe saying your facial expression could show that you're overreacting. What else? What else? Body language. Right. Yeah. Right. And all of this is communication. Yeah. When you're showing that you're overreacting, it's all communicating something to the kid, to the not listening and asking them to stop is also a kind of a message. Oh, we might be a little frozen. Let's see if we come back. Okay, it's taking a little longer than usual. Hopefully it'll reset in just a second. Sorry about this. Okay, I believe we're back. Sorry about the pause. Joe and Sandrine, just let me know if you can hear me now, please. Okay, so you're with me on Zoom. Sorry about the delay. So yes, good, okay. So what we're wanting to really tune into here is that however we respond in the middle of a meltdown, a tantrum, or a power struggle, it's a form of communication. We're actually sharing a message. And we're specifically sharing a message around whether or not it's okay to have an emotion, to express an emotion, to act on an emotion, right? Because if you think about it, like, they're in the middle of saying, I'm having a big feeling, and then whatever we respond to that is sharing, is it okay for you to have this big feeling and express the way you are and, feel the way you feel? And so what can happen here is that because we want to communicate to them first and foremost, that it is okay to have an emotion, that it is okay for us to find a way through it. Oftentimes, though, like, that will be out the window, and what we'll do is we'll react, like Joe was saying, and even overreact. I was just on with a client today, one of my smart, big-hearted parents. She actually has teenagers, and we're working through one of her goals, which is, she's like, I want to be a less reactive parent. And we talked about how it really takes kind of almost like growing a muscle, like a bicep, right? Or the muscle memory of a dance move, and really being able to just do it without having to think about it, to be able to be more responsive and less reactive in the moment. How many of you can relate to that? Like, it's not always easy to respond the way that you want to. and we'll go into more of why this happens in the Meltdown workshop. So again, if you haven't registered for that, I highly recommend it. The link will be in the chat in just a moment here for you, Joe. I think you might have missed it. So here you go. But so here we are, we're wanting to communicate in our best moment, in our best selves. We'll communicate things like reassurances, like, it's okay, like, we'll work through this, or maybe a loving limit if they're crossing a line, like, hey, it's okay to be mad, but it's not okay for you to hit, right? Maybe there's some other things that we want to get through. Welcome, Priya, glad you're here. We're just talking about, like, what messages we're trying to get through to our kids when they're in these big upsets. So in our best moments, those are the things we want to share. In our worst moments, we actually give them a different kind of message. When we overreact, when we scream and yell, when we use our facial expression, mirrors their anger, or we, our body language gets really tense, or maybe like really collapsed, like, oh, whatever it might be. The message we're actually sharing with them is that there's something wrong with the feeling. And what often happens next after they receive a message that there's something wrong with the way you're feeling is that you're arguing with their emotion, like you're picking a fight with the feeling. And so one thing I always say is if you pick a fight with a feeling, you're going to lose. Because the moment you make it wrong for the child to have the feeling or the emotion that they have in the first place, the moment you switch sides, you're no longer on their side. And the part of them that's still processing their emotion and isn't quite through it yet will go on the defense or even the offense, will shut down, will shut you out, and things can get worse. How many of you made this mistake before by saying things like, and let me know, like you say like, I've done it. Say it in the chat or comments, like, I've done it. I've definitely fought with a feeling. Me. Yeah. Sandrine says me. You can just say me in the chat or the comments. It's so easy to kind of take the bait. One of my mentors shared an analogy with me that I love. It just helps me so much. And I'm now sharing it with my clients. She said, it's like they have the end of a tug of war rope and they're waving it in your face. And they're like, pick it up and tug so we can do this, especially in a power struggle. Or it could be like, I'm going to hide, but really what's going to happen is you're going to come and see me a lot and really, really want to get in there. So it's like this whole dynamic that's being created. And oftentimes we'll fight with them or we'll quickly try to say, it's nothing to worry about. Like, or don't be sad. How many times have you heard, don't cry, it's okay, don't cry, don't scream, a lot of don't. Or it's okay, you don't need to get this angry or this sad or this scared. And while that is the message we want them to walk away with, it's not the one they need in the moment. Let's just really feel into that for a moment. Even though that is the message you want them to walk away with, like they're okay and they don't have to get quite this upset. There's another way through this. They're not ready to hear that yet. What they actually need to know is that you're on their side and you actually see the state that they're in and can help them make sense of it and move through it. And we'll go into more details on emotion coaching in the webinar. Okay. So again, if you haven't had a chance to sign up, I think Priya wasn't here when the link was shared. Just go ahead and click that link and sign up. It's this Saturday at 10 a.m. and there'll be a replay if you can't make it live, even though Sandrine heard me say how important it is to make it live if you can, because then I'll coach you more directly. Yeah. Okay. So I want you to just write in the comment or the chat the big takeaway I want you to have, and then I'll go into a little more detail, which is don't pick a fight with a feeling because you'll always lose. Whatever way you want to phrase that so you'll remember it. Write it in the comments, write it in the chat. Let me know that you've got that one before I move into the next piece, okay? Yeah, can you do that for me, please? Yeah, go ahead and do that so that we can see, I can see that you're with me here. Yeah. Good. Okay. Go ahead and write it in, whatever that looks like. I want to make sure you've got it. So we're going to lock it in. This is another learning hack, by the way, is like having a person like say it in their own words and maybe even repeat it sometimes, or putting it into their own, their own little spot. You might even write this on a little sticky note to stick up for yourself. Nice, Priya. Yeah, Joe. Good. Yeah, good. Yeah, Sandrine made a post-it for herself. Beautiful. It's exactly what I was going to share. Like, just put that somewhere where you'll walk by it so it becomes integrated. Like, this is something I have all my clients do all the time. Is like I just had someone, one of my clients this morning, another client, write down a little plan of how she's going to approach fixing a mistake with her 13-year-old. Yeah, because she just needs those steps written up somewhere so she can fix it. Good. Okay, nice. Oh, it's on your desk. Nice, Sandrine. I love it. Okay, so now that you know that you're not going to fight a feeling, the other thing that we really need to avoid, and this is straight out of Brene Brown's work on empathy. So this is around the sense that we're going to empathize instead of sympathize. Empathy is so powerful because what it is it's like, this is how Brene Brown would describe it. For those of you who don't know Brene Brown, just like look her up and look up the word empathy and you'll find lots of great stuff. But let me just summarize. So imagine you experience some kind of loss and you're really sad. And it feels like you're kind of in like the bottom of a hole, like in this little cave. Empathy would be getting on the ladder, walking down the ladder, coming down and sitting next to you, putting your arm around you and saying, I'm so glad you told me that what you're sad about. Okay. Sympathy would look like poking your head through from the hole at the top ladder and going, you all right? You need a sandwich? You know, you okay down there? Well, let me know when you're done with that, you know? And it's more like sympathy, like, oh, bless your heart. Oh, sorry you fell down there, you know? And even worse, a worse version of sympathy is like, well, like let's say you lost your dog. Your dog got hit by a car and died, and you have 2 dogs, and they'd be like, well, at least you got another dog. So that silver lining, it is a form of optimism. Don't get me wrong. Like being a silver linings person is not a bad trait in terms of your resilience. However, when you're in the middle of emotion coaching another human being and they're in the throes of their big emotion, silver linings sometimes can be so hurtful. Because what it is it's actually kind of belittling the feeling that they're having, belittling their experience of it, and saying like, well, you can just get over it because there's something over here that's great, you know? Now, occasionally this is a good thing for like a quick swap out. Like they drop their ice cream and they're like, oh, sweetheart, we'll clean it up in a minute. Let's go get you another one. And then they're like, okay. And then you bring them over and get it for them, right? So that can be sort of a silver linings in a sense, but it's actually a little bit more robust than just saying, well, at least there's more ice cream in the world, is like, would be more of like a silver linings. Or, well, at least you can eat a piece of fruit, which is not quite it. You can see how, right? So being careful of the silver lining, that's like the part 2 of what you want, a mistake that folks make. And again, in some way, you're giving this message that's saying the big emotion you're having is not right. Something wrong about it. You should just be getting over that like real quick. We can get like that sometimes, right? Because we just want, we're like, again. So how many of you have done that before? I've definitely done it. I've done it like before. And before, or like, you know, you really tune in with empathy to a situation, you can silver linings a lot of things. I remember that being one of my strategies for even comforting my friends before I experienced a real loss, like a death in the family. I kind of was I couldn't quite relate to the level of grief and loss people were feeling. And I would be tempted to silver linings it and say, it's like, well, you know, at least you have your memories of him or something, when that's really like, anything that starts with at least you've got this, not really helpful when you're experiencing a big emotion. Now, a year down the road, when they've really done their healing process and they say it, well, at least I'll always have their memories in my heart. That's when you can get on board with the silver lining. You get my drift there? Yeah? Okay. All right. So, so I would say save silver linings for later. That's like the phrase I would want you to have, like, save those silver linings for later, like save them. It's not, I'm not making them wrong or like the worst thing you could do, but just don't sell them on a silver lining in the moment of it. Like save it for later. Save those silver linings for later. Okay. Please. All right. You got it. If you've got it, put it in the comments in the chat so I know. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's really important. Okay, so once I see you all have it, we can move on to the next one, but I really want you to get it. And you can even give an example of a time, if you want, share with me a time that someone else tried to silver linings you. And can you remember the fresh hurt that you felt? Like, I really remember like caring a lot about a grade at school and doing really poorly at at a test, and a teacher being like, well, at least you can you can try harder on the next test. And the hurt was too fresh of like not doing well on this test. And it just sort of made it sound like it's easy, no big deal. But really that something was going wrong. And later I found out I actually had an undiagnosed learning challenge when it comes to memory. And what my teacher didn't know is that I spent like dozens of rounds of drilling flashcards. And then when I got to the test, I couldn't remember what I had tried so hard to memorize. And so it really didn't land well with me of like, well, try again next time, you know, like at least you have another try. Although later, when I was through, like, through some of the stages of learning what I needed and everything, it would be that would feel more like a pep talk later. But when I'm in the big emotion of like really feeling discouraged, it wasn't helpful. Yeah. So Priya saying, go easy on the silver lining. You don't have to say something positive on all occasions, right? So dropping into empathy of like, I'm so glad you shared that with me, and I'll teach more about how to do that on Saturday. Joe saying it's so late and she's going to catch up later. Really interesting. Okay, yeah, no problem, Joe. Thanks for being here. And good evening to you. Good night. I know sounds like you're on the other side of the planet, wherever you are. Where are you, Joe? Let us know before you go. So curious. Oh, she left. All right. Okay, looks like we're ready for the next one. And if you're here on Facebook, make sure you write down the 2 things we've covered so far, right? Which I'll read with. Priya said, listen, don't pick a fight with feelings was the first one, the big one. Hi, Elise, who's on Facebook. Nice to have you here. And Sandrine, save silver linings for later. Yeah, good. So those are our top 2. Really, they're all a part of not picking a fight with the feelings, and not making the feelings wrong in some way, sharing that message. Okay. So here's another one. And this one really gets me in my heart, but we do it anyway because maybe we've been modeled this, or in the moment we overreact, we can't help it, which I can help you with, by the way, just like I've helped my clients. We've got some great trainings coming up with how to slow down your nervous system so it doesn't react so strongly, starting with this Saturday's webinar. This has to do with shaming in any form. And the one that comes up a lot, especially if there are siblings, or if you are taking I can't relate to this strategy, not even strategy, I can't relate to this perspective. It's sort of like, why are you so upset about it? Like you get to, it's only 5 minutes. You only need to wait for 5 minutes. Like, why can't you be more patient like your brother? Okay. Or like, I never get this upset when this happens to me. So it's the cost of comparison. So when you compare a child's emotional upset to your own, to what you would do in that scenario, or of what their sibling would do in that scenario, or their friend. I mean, I've even seen teachers make this misstep, like teachers that I am mentoring say, look at so-and-so, they're not upset. Why are you so upset? And I'm just over in the corner during my observation going, oh no. Because what emotion that brings up is shame and embarrassment. And if it doesn't work and they see that you're trying to shame them or embarrass them, they're just going to be so mad at you and insulted that you even tried that tactic, right? Especially for older kids. If you have 7, 8 and up, they kind of look at you with almost disgust, like, really? You're going to talk to me like that? Like they start to get it, that it's really a no-no. And they're going to feel so betrayed. Like, just how could you talk to me like that? How many of you have maybe done that with a teenager? I have, by accident. Yeah, like just the moment you start to evoke the other example, whether it's yourself or the sibling, it's so detrimental. So I kind of saved the worst for last, guys, friends. Do not bring shame into it, especially like really realize that there is a huge cost to comparison. So that would be what I want you to write in the comments or the chats, like avoid comparison at all costs. Okay. Yeah. Avoid comparisons at all costs, because there's a big cost of comparison. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead and write that in the chat. Sandrine posted that too. Sandrine, I want to know how old your kids are, by the way. And Priya, I think we've connected before, but just remind me, if you would, how old are the kids in your care, and where are you located? I know 7 and 9, right, Sandrine? Thank you. I think you've been on one before, right, Priya? You have a 9-year-old. Thank you for reminding me. Good. Okay. And then I know Elise on Facebook, she's one of my clients. She's got a child in her 2 and 5, so 2.5 now, Elise, I believe. Yeah. And so here we are. We're going to wrap up this piece. And again, I'm going to implore you, like, sign up for the webinar, because we're going to go into the science of meltdowns, how to slow down your role and shift into responding instead of reacting. Some really key excuse me, some really key strategies of how to do that. And even more importantly, like how to detect when you definitely don't want to fight with a feeling, compare, or use the silver linings. Like there's this model that I'm going to share with you that you can also share with your kids for the whole family to know, like what stage of upset are you in and what you should definitely not do during that time. And then I'll also share like what you can do when kids are like, when anyone in the family is that upset, that to like do things to soothe yourself, to empathize, to bring things down to a point where maybe you could talk through some of the silver linings, or you could talk about comparisons and things where it's not shaming. Yeah. But in that moment when they're having that big emotion, just remember, don't pick a fight with a feeling, shifting away from silver linings, shifting away from comparisons, and really start to think about how you could empathize with them, and then come to the Saturday training so you can get more information about that. Okay. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm so happy y'all were able to make it today. I'm excited to further support you. We'll be back next week, this time on Monday at 2, and I will give you a recap of the webinar, but I'm telling you the Saturday webinar is where it's at. This is my most popular workshop for a reason. I've given it to over a dozen schools in the last 2 years, as well as, several times online. The reason why I do it almost 10 times a year is because of how useful it is. Even my clients review it. Elise just had a review of this, last month. So we're always keeping our tools, their tool chest growing and sharpening our tools so that we can use them in more precise, more accurate, more effective ways. And then our kids can pick them up from us. I mean, how many of you would like a child who is about to head into Meltdownville and goes, nope, I'm going to go to my calm down corner, take some deep breaths, and come back when I'm calm enough to use a calm voice? Huge, right? I had a 6-year-old who arrived in my classroom, just a little story for inspiration. Anytime she got upset, she would completely lose it. And it was just so hard. She had big meltdowns, big tantrums. And the meltdowns were when she was sad about things, and the tantrums were when she was mad about things. How many of you can relate to that? Yeah. So she would do things like she'd have a conflict with someone on the yard, and she'd immediately sometimes she'd get sad and mad at the same time. And she would do this thing where she'd be crying and screaming at the same time, and her face would turn bright red, and the things come out of her mouth were not helpful at all. Her friends just kind of stood there like, what do I do here? She would do that almost daily, sometimes 3 times a day, until I introduced her the model that I'm going to share with you on Saturday, and the whole class. And then we built from that to the point where she was, I had her for 3 years in a Montessori classroom. As an 8, 9-year-old, she could come up to me and go and make this hand signal that we established. I would nod. She'd go take herself to the calm down corner. She would do something soothing like yoga, breathing, reading a book, listening to some music. And she'd come back and say, I did it, Vanessa. I put my lid back on, and now I'm ready to solve the problem. I'm going to go to the problem solving suggestion chart and pick one. And I'll let you know what I pick. And then she calmly invites her friends over to the peace corner, and they work out the problem using the tools that I shared with them on conflict resolution. And I was ecstatic for her, because what a great skill to have at 8 and 9. Imagine if she hadn't figured that out. And so I'm just thinking about Priya, your 9-year-old, and your Sandrine, your 6-year-old, right? And you have a 7 and 9 as well? No. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on. Oh, as a 6-year-old. Yes. Okay. I think I got it, Sandrine. Yeah. Okay. Here's my story. Yeah. So she was 6 when I met her, and she was scream crying. And then by the time she was 8, 9, we had worked together for several years, and all the tools and strategies that I share with parents. Yeah. She had adopted, she had internalized, she had practiced under my guidance, just like my parents are guiding their children in my programs, to be able to use those tools independently. And like, I'm just sharing with you, like almost her like graduation moment of like her stage of emotional mastery, right? And social skills and problem solving skills. She was like dynamo at it, so much that when the new first graders came in, I buddied her up with another kid who had big emotions so that they could have an accelerated course by watching how she does it. Someone else with big emotions dealt with them so that they could learn from her example. And that child, came along a lot quicker because she had that example in her sphere. someone she looked up to. So that 9-year-old got to be a model. So a lot of my graduates would go on to, to their next school, let's say, or even on to middle school. And I'd hear back from the parents. They're like, well, so my child is a self-appointed peacekeeper because their social and emotional skills are so advanced compared to the average kid out there. And of course, I'm teacher proud, but mostly I'm just so happy for the child that they have the confidence, right, to bring those tools, and not only for their own conflicts, but to help mediate others. I mean, it's just this incredible opportunity for our kids to have all this resilience and to share it with others. So I invite you into that possibility. And one major step that, the folks in my world do is they come to my Meltdowns workshop and show up for talks like this. So we'll be back on next week on Monday at 2 p.m. to recap the workshop a bit, the webinar, but go ahead and sign up for it. We'll see you Saturday, and then you'll have a whole week to watch the replay if you do have to miss it for some reason. And then we're going to continue on this topic of emotional mastery for a few weeks here so that you can really root it in your system. And then we have a really special event in December. I'll be making some announcements where we can spend 6 days to learn 6 ways to find calm in the chaos so that we don't have that reaction. We get really, really good at staying calm and collected, even when the kids are losing it, shutting down, all the ways that it shows up. That sounds good to you, say I'm in in the comments or the chat, because the where we can be by the end of this calendar year is so exciting. And then there's so much more after that. Like Elise, who's listening in, knows she's been in my program now for about 9 months and has seen such big changes. And what did you say, Elise, that you felt like you fell down a hole? Yeah, when your child went back to school and then things didn't go well right away, and that I was there at the top of the hole with a ladder. That's exactly how I hope you felt me come down the ladder to be with you too, to help you find your way up. So that's the goal here, is for us to be in community, to be in this container of support so we can raise resilient kids together. Like, you could do it on your own, like go read the books, listen to the podcast, read the articles, wade your way through all that information. Sure. But I also see the value in, not having to do it on your own. And that's why I show up for you all weekly and then do deeper dives like these free webinars that I share and the low cost training that's coming in December. So it's all for you. Lots of love to all your big hearted parents. You're the reason why I do what I do. Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Saturday for the webinar. You're so welcome, Sandrine. Priya's got a thumbs up that she's in. Awesome. Sharon is saying that she's seen such amazing, or she saw such amazing improvement in the story. Thanks, Sharon. Good to see you. Someone who's been to some of my events and really knows my work well. But yeah, isn't that a fun story? I know, right? What's possible? It's just incredible. And I'll see you all next time on Saturday or next Monday at 2 p.m. See you then. Lots of love.